哇，大家做错了，应该大家都来了啦，哈。OK。Okay, so everyone, today we are very happy to invite Professor Takashi Horizuka from Tokyo Nihon University. Okay, actually he's also the keynote speaker of our CII annual meeting, which was held in Saturday. Okay, so I remember some of you are the employees. Okay, so you are helps to prepare about the annual meeting. So maybe you don't have the time to join Professor Takashi's speech on Saturday. So today I think you have this great opportunity to join Takashi-san's speech. Okay, so let me briefly introduce Takashi-san's degree. He got the master degree in the Waseda University, and then got the PhD degree in Keio University, 庆应大学，早稻田硕士，庆应的博士。Okay, so right now he is the president of Japan Human Factors and Ergonomics Society. Okay, so he is also our good friend and the model for learning. Okay, so he's very nice and easygoing, and I think you guys have very good opportunity to join his speech today. Okay, so please help me welcome Professor Takashi Horizuka.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, it's a great honor to be here and to do this presentation. Today, I'd like to talk about global HFE. So here, I use the word HFE as human factors and ergonomics. So this topic is slightly different in nature from what we traditionally refer to as HFE. And in other words, so I like to discuss a new perspective of HFE through a systems approach. So in recent years, we have begun to recognize that HFE is not limited to such user-centered or worker-centered perspectives. Rather, it is becoming increasingly important to take a systems approach. Considering the relationship and interdependence among various stakeholders. And therefore, today, I'd like to go one step further to think about how HFE can contribute more global or planetary scale issues. So in other words, so we might call this future-oriented HFE. So in the past, HFE tended to take a problem-solving stance. When a problem occurred, HFE specialists analyzed it and tried to solve it. But what I want to discuss today is a proactive stance. An HFE that anticipates the future and addresses problems before they arise, using human-centered perspectives as a basis for forecasting and design. So HFE, in essence, is not a narrow discipline, but a way of thinking or a methodological framework that can be applied to a wide variety of fields. There are, of course, numerous application areas of HFE. For example, if we think of end users as the main focus, we have HFE of daily goods, computers, and computer mice and keyboards and chairs and so forth. So when we adopt a user-centered perspective, these examples make sense. On the other hand, so if we take a worker-oriented perspective, we begin to think about the ease and comfort of work for people in factories or offices. So HFE then concerns itself with issues such as work efficiency and comfort, safety, and well-being in occupational environments. In addition, so there are HFE studies dealing with train drivers, bus drivers, and airplane pilots. So these are also examples of HFE focusing on professional operators. So HFE continuously evolves along with changes in its target of study. And what derives these changes? So it is, of course, the advancement of technology. So as technology advances, the very way we interact with tools and systems changes. For example, the way we drive cars today is fundamentally different from how it used to be. And that difference has direct implications for HFE. So in the past, the law set a limit of 50 pounds for manual lifting. But so it could easily lead to back injuries. So however, by using muscle suits or power assist suits, workers can now lift heavier loads without straining their backs or causing such injuries. So another example can be seen in the photo second from the right on this slide. So borrowed from the homepage of Ando Kazama Corporation. So in this case, various wearable sensors are embodied in the work clothing, allowing workers to monitor their body conditions and helping to prevent heat stroke. So thanks to such technological advancements, we now have systems that can assist humans and make our working environment safer and more adaptive. So at present, so perhaps the most significant technological issue influencing HFE is the rapid development of artificial intelligence. When machinery and automation were first introduced, a major topic in HFE was the allocation of functions between humans and machines. And later, with the emergence of robots, this evolved into discussions about human-robot collaboration and division of roles. Now, with the rise of AI, we are moving toward another new frontier, understanding and designing the cooperation and roles sharing between humans and AI systems. So this will likely become one of the major topics in HFE in the years to come. In summary, when technology changes, HFE changes as well. So that is because the relationship between humans and the objectives or systems they interact with is evolving. So therefore, it becomes increasingly important for us to practice HFE with a future-oriented perspective. Therefore, when we look toward the future, the one important concept is backcasting. The backcasting is not merely a method of predicting the future, but rather it begins with an image of the ideal future state and works backward to identify the steps needed to reach that goal. Sorry, this is sorry. So for instance, maybe you can understand. So for instance, we may predict that in 10 years, certain technology will be introduced, and the world will have changed in specific ways. So backcasting always assumes a positive future, a future in which things will improve. So we imagine, for example, that in 5 years or 10 years, society will have advanced, and then we ask, what should we do in 4 years, in 3 years, in 2 years, in order to make that positive future a reality? So in this way, we create a roadmap, and develop concrete plans based on it. That process is what we call backcasting. So we often use the term forecasting to refer to prediction. So what is the difference between backcasting and forecasting? So as I mentioned earlier, backcasting always starts from a positive image. So positive image of the future, 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years ahead, and works backward to determine what actions are needed. Now realize that desirable change. It assumes improvement and progress as a premise. Therefore, it is an approach that constantly aims to develop positive and proactive technologies. So in contrast, forecasting is conventional from a future prediction based on current trends. So we tend to say, since things are like this now, they will probably be like that in 3 years and like this in 1 year. So however, forecasting sometimes assumes that the current state may deteriorate. So when this happens, future projections are made from an already worsened state. So if the situation fails to improve, future prediction continues to be made from that negative condition. So in that sense, forecasting often ends up functions as a kind of damage control. So, or a response to consequences of change, rather than driver of positive transformation. So thus, in order to practice HFE with a systems approach and a forward-looking attitude, we must employ methods such as backcasting. So this idea is not limited to HFE, so it is relevant to all human-centered systems, disciplines, by envisioning desirable futures and create roadmaps toward them. So HFE contributes to shaping a better society. As I mentioned before, the way HFE evolves with technological change is something that anyone can observe. But today, however, I'd like to go beyond that, so to discuss something larger in scope, global scale issues that even those of us in HFE and even within JS members may not have considered deeply before. When we speak of global scale or planetary level challenges, we can also use the term global HFE. So in this lecture, I will use both terms, global and planetary, interchangeably as we move forward. So what kind of issues can be regarded as global challenges? As listed here, they include climate change, environmental destruction, and depletion of natural resources. For example, automobiles, especially those using gasoline, depend on petroleum. So the depletion of fossil fuel is one such global concern. We also face problems of urbanization and desertification. So on this slide, so maybe you can see the Sahara Desert and the Arabian Peninsula. So both vast desert area on our planet. As desert regions expand, meteorological imbalances increase, and the likelihood of large-scale natural disaster grows. So another major issue is global health. The health and well-being are, without question, global concerns as well. Traditionally, the HFE has not often addressed these planetary scale problems. So that's probably because when we speak of usability or user friendliness, it seems difficult to directly connect such concept with issues like climate change or natural degradation. Many might ask, so how does HFE relate to natural or environmental problems? So to be honest, so I was one of those people in the past. So however, as I have thought more deeply about it, I have come to realize that HFE must be involved in addressing these challenges. The first time HFE scholars seriously engaged with these global scale issues was in 1992, more than 30 years ago, when a researcher named Moray first used global ergonomics, global HFE, and global ergonomics, and discussed sustainable HFE at an international HFE conference. Therefore, the 1992 marks the historical starting point for the discussion of planetary issues within the HFE community. From the late 1990s through the 2000s and around 2010s, the idea of sustainable HFE gained greater recognition. So, however, there were still very few discussions about how to implement it in practice. In 2013, so Andrew Thatcher, a scholar from South Africa, so now he's the president of the International Ergonomics Association, published a paper introducing the concept of green ergonomics. So in that work, he described practical approaches for addressing sustainability challenges through ergonomic methods. So since around 2010, more studies have begun to focus on applied approaches to sustainability and HFE. As a result, new subfields such as ergoecology, sustainable systems of systems, and climate HFE have emerged. So now, what does systems of systems mean? So it refers to highly complex systems composed of multiple subsystems that together form an even larger system. So this concept captures the interconnectedness and complexity of modern human technology environment systems. Returning to Morelli's proposal from 1992, so he identified 7 goals problems that HFE should address. These were the water and food and energy, urbanization and pollution and healthcare and violence. So Morelli argued that the field of HFE must contribute to solving these problems. And since then, a variety of practical studies and initiatives have been developed worldwide. So let us now looking at some practical examples of how HFE can contribute to solving global problems. The first example relates to water. As Morales pointed out, the issue of water management is closely linked to HFE in many ways. Consider, for instance, the design of public restroom faucets. Today, many of these faucets are automatic. Water flows automatically when hands are connected, without the user having to turn handles. So there are 2 reasons why this system is important. So one is hygiene. After using restroom, people do not have to touch the faucet. The second is water conservation. When we manually open the faucet, the water continues to flow for as long as we keep it open, which means that a lot of water is wasted during that time. So automatic faucet helps save water by stopping the flow precisely when it is no longer needed. But from an ergonomic perspective, questions arise such as, where should the sensor be placed to achieve more effective response? How should the water flow be adjusted to feel natural to the user? There is also research on electric water faucets. So, which mix air with water to give users the impression of stronger flow, while actually reducing the amount of water used. So, determining how many air bubbles to mix in to create the optimal perceived water volume is itself an ergonomic question. So thus, we can see that even water-related issues are deeply concerned with HFE. So next, let us look at examples related to energy efficiency. So here again, HFE plays a vital role, especially in designing effective interfaces. One example involves intuitive controls that minimize energy waste. The modern heating and cooling system often use AI-based control mechanisms to automatically adjust temperature and humidity. However, so what kind of control patterns most effectively contributes to human comfort and ergonomic question? When humans feel too hot, they lower the temperature setting. When they feel too cold, they raise it. So each adjustment consumes additional energy. So therefore, maintaining an optimal comfort level consistently helps reduce unnecessary energy use. So So HFE contributes by designing systems and interfaces that provide user with easy, intuitive, and responsive control experiences, helping to maintain comfort while minimizing waste. So another example concerns urbanization. Urbanization brings various problems, including those related to transportation systems. For instance, so in the Tokyo metropolitan areas, so maybe in Taiwan or Taipei or Kansai as well, traffic cognition during commuting hours is a serious issue. So this is true when cars are stuck in traffic for long periods. So they emit large amounts of CO2 and NOx, which has severe environmental impacts. To address this, many governments, including Japan, are trying to shift commuters from private cars to public transportation systems, such as trains. However, trains also consume electricity, which requires power generation. Still, when comparing energy efficiency, idling vehicles in traffic waste for more energy and produce more emissions than public transit systems. Therefore, reducing car traffic in city centers and encouraging public transportation can significantly help mitigate environmental problems. But this transition is not simple. So there are psychological and behavioral barriers that prevent people from switching to public transportation. So it is crucial to identify these barriers and design systems that encourage people to choose trains and buses voluntarily. So this includes studying the motivational factors behind such choices, evaluating whether the barriers have been effectively reduced, and redesigning systems accordingly. So these tasks may seem like the domain of other disciplines, but they are in fact deeply human-centered problems, and thus strongly related to HFE. And so next, let us now consider eco-driving. So this is another field in which HFE can contribute significantly. So for example, how can we provide information to drivers? So in a way that encourages them to drive more efficiently and environmentally friendly manner. So what kind of feedback can increase a driver's motivation for eco-driving? So research has shown that when drivers receive feedback and how effectively they are driving, for instance, visual indicators that show fuel consumptions in real time, their motivation to drive economically increase dramatically. So thus, HFE can help by designing interfaces that communicate such information effectively and intuitively. In short, HFE plays a key role in promoting eco-drive and reducing energy consumption. Another area where HFE has great potential is in recycling systems and reduction of chemical waste. Take, for example, recycling centers. One question is, what kind of what kind of recycling center design is most efficient? If a system is efficient, does that mean that workers can perform their tasks more easily and comfortably? Worker safety is another key ergonomic issue. Designing workplace in which workers can operate safely and efficiently is part of HFE responsibility. So this includes studying the layout of workstations, the movement patterns of workers, and the handling of materials, all to ensure both efficiency and safety. So in this sense, HFE contributes not only to environmental sustainability, but also to the protection of human well-being in industrial context. So in addition to these topics, there are other important fields where HFE can play a meaningful role. One such area is security and anti-terrorism. Also, they might not be a major research topic in Japan, so it has attracted considerable attention internationally. For example, the study of team coordination among security personnel is an ergonomic problem. How can teams communicate and cooperate more efficiently during emergencies? What forms of coordination minimize errors and maximize safety? There are issues where HFE can provide valuable insight. So since Moray's initial proposals, numerous studies have emerged in these various areas. So recently, new concepts such as green ergonomics and ergo ecology have been proposed and future developed and further developed. Moreover, the focus has recently expanded to include the interaction between climate change and HFE. So in other words, how can HFE help people adapt to and mitigate the effects of global climate change? At present, many of you may already be aware that climate change has become an extremely serious issue around the world. This slide shows the current levels of CO2 concentration and the overall state of global warming. As of July 2024, the average concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere was 425.55 ppm. The average global temperature has risen by 1.6 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial era. So it is said that when the CO2 concentration reaches around 450 ppm, the level of uncertainty in climate response increases dramatically. And the permanent temperature rises stabilize at approximately 1 degrees Celsius. However, since we have already reached 425.55 ppm and are observing 1.6 degree increase, it is indeed worrisome to think about what may happen next. According to Adam Skype of the United Kingdom Meteorological Office in 2023, so he predicted that there was a 66% probability that the world's average temperature would temporarily exceed 1.5 degrees before 2027. In reality, this occurred even earlier. By 2024, the global temperature had already risen 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. This indicates that we are in a very serious situation. So the figure on the slide shows the data average from 1991 to 2020. You can clearly see how global temperature has continued to rise. To respond to climate change, there are generally two main strategies. So that is mitigation and adaptation. Adaptation refers to how we live and work within a world that has already become hotter. It is about how humans can survive and function effectively under changing climatic conditions. So this is represented on the right side on the slide. So on the left side is mitigation, which focuses on preventing or reducing further climate change. So in other words, it asks, what should we do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which if we consider to have a role to play in both mitigation and adaptation. So let us begin with mitigation. What can we do to reduce CO2 emissions? So there are several ergonomic approaches to this. For example, designing energy efficient systems, introducing new renewable energy systems, promoting efficient use of land and resources. In each of these cases, the design of interfaces becomes an essential factor where HFE can contribute. The HFE can make interfaces more intuitive and human-friendly, ensuring that people can easily understand and interact with systems that support energy efficiency. Moreover, when incorporating AI into such systems, it is important to develop AI that can make human-compatible decisions. That is, systems whose reasoning aligns naturally with human expectations. And this too is a task for HFE. By improving these interactions, so we can prevent energy loss and contribute to the design of more efficient systems overall. The same applies to renewable energy systems. The interface design and feedback feedback mechanisms are both crucial from an ergonomic perspective. For example, Ergonomics study how to provide users with clear and motivating feedback about their energy saving behavior. These ideas represent ergonomic contributions to mitigation strategies. That is, strategies for reducing CO2 emissions. So now let us move on the second strategy, adaptation. So since global temperatures have already risen significantly, we must now consider how humans can work and live safely in a hot environment. So let us begin with measures against heat explosion. As global temperature continues to rise, this is becoming an increasingly serious concern. We also need to think about related problems such as UV, ultraviolet, so UV radiations, allergies, pathogens, and other issues associated with extreme weather events. Among these, let us first focus on heat-related problems. To protect people from excessive heat, we can consider the concept of shelters, places or designs that allow people to escape from high temperatures. This includes architectural solutions such as shaded areas and the design of cooling buildings. Another important point concerns how to remove heat accumulated in the human body. For instance, in the construction industry, workers may wear clothing equipped with built-in fans. By circulating air under the shift, these fans help reduce the heat trapped beneath and clothing, keeping the body cooler and preventing heat stress. I recently saw workers wearing such. I recently saw workers wearing such garments, so I believe the system are already used here in Taiwan as well. But HFE also contributes to the design of systems that allow workers when their body temperature is approaching dangerous level, helping to prevent heat stroke. At an organization level, HFE can contribute to work schedule design for example, determining an optimal timing for breaks to reduce fatigue and heat stress. And next, let us talk about ultraviolet, so UV exposure. To save time, I will summarize these points briefly. From an individual perspective, ergonomic concerns include how to minimize human exposure to UV radiation. For example, we can develop systems that monitor UV exposure levels and alert users when they have been exposed for too long. So other examples include the design of UV protective clothing and UV protective sunglasses. From an organization perspective, similar to heat exposure, it is important to design work schedules and break timing appropriately. Organizations can also monitor workers' skin conditions, and if someone shows signs of UV damage, temporarily remove the person from high exposure environments. So this kind of health management is another example. Another example of an ergonomic approach at the organizational level. So allergies are another issues that has become more serious in recent years. For example, many people suffer from pollen allergies, and the symptoms have worsened compared to the past. So this may be due, at least in part, to climatic changes, so climate changes. So allergens are not limited to pollen. So they also include PM 12.5 and yellow dust carried from other regions. To address this, we need systems that can detect and inform people about the level of such airborne substances and warn them of potential health risks. On the individual level, we can also develop allergy-resistant fabrics for clothing and design devices that can mitigate allergic symptoms. For example, anti-pollen glasses are one such ergonomic solution. From an organization standpoint, monitoring and early detection are key. The systems can be developed to monitor workers' physiological signs and detect early indications of allergic reactions. Such health monitoring systems are also part of HFE. And finally, let us consider extreme weather events. Early warning and communications are essential. So when a warning or alert is issued, such for heavy rain or typhoons, how should it be communicated to public? So this is fundamentally an interface design problem, and therefore lies sequentially within the field of HFE. For instance, my smartphone sends alerts whenever severe weather warning is issued for a particular region. The questions that become, at what timing and through what interface should such information be delivered most effectively? These are problems that HFE should help solve. At an organizational level, HFE also contributes to enabling remote work in situations caused by extreme weather. After the COVID-19 pandemic, many companies began allowing employees to work from home. So designing and improving home-based work environments is now an important ergonomic task. On the individual level, HFE also supports the development of devices that help people protect themselves from disasters such as floods or torrential rains. All of these, dealing with heat, UV exposure, allergies, and extreme weather, represent the ergonomics aspect of human adaptation to climate change. So now let us also consider safety guidelines and evacuation behavior when thinking about how humans can adapt to environmental change. Safety is always central concern. For example, in evacuation scenarios, we must consider how people can escape safely and smoothly. So maybe more, maybe more. I will. We must consider how people can escape safely and smoothly. These hazards along the evacuation routes. What layouts and signal systems allow people to evacuate efficiently under stress or confusion? These are all ergonomic problems. The development of safety guidelines based on human characteristics and behaviors is therefore one of the important applications of HFE. And adaptation to climate change. Now, let us also consider safety guidelines and evacuation behavior. when thinking about how humans can adapt to environmental change, so safety is always in central concern. For example, in evacuation scenarios, we must consider how people can escape safely and smoothly. Are these hazards along the evacuation routes? Yeah, so that's the conclusion part. So now moving towards the conclusion, we can recognize that global issues, that is, planetary scale problems, must now be addressed within the field of HFE. So it is becoming increasingly important to understand the necessity of global HFE, that is, the HFE that deals with issues on the global scale. Traditionally, HFE has focused on problems such as interface usability and interactions, considering how to make systems easier to use or how to ensure comfort and appropriate workload in the workplace. That was where HFE began. And for a long time, it remains the main focus. However, over time, so HFE has gradually expanded its scope. We have come to realize that work is not done alone, and life is not life alone. So therefore, we began to consider the importance of terms, the importance of teams. So if a team functions well, errors and accidents are less likely to occur. So thus, we started studying how team quality and decision-making processes affect performance and safety outcomes. Furthermore, since team always exists within organizations, HFE began to examine organizational structures as well. So when discussing organizations, we must also consider organizational culture. Every organization, like every university, has its own culture. Some are strict and rule-based, and while others are looser and more flexible. In some workplaces, small rule violations may be tolerated, while in others, compliance is strictly enforced. So these cultural differences affect team dynamics and individual working styles. And therefore, understanding of an organizational culture has become an essential part of HFE. However, what I want to emphasize today goes beyond that point. We must now think about much larger issues: climate change, sustainability, and the survival of humankind itself. So thus, the scope and focus of HFE are becoming increasingly broad. So it is no longer enough to limit ourselves to the human-machine interface or to individual work environment. We must begin to look at HFE on a global scale. So at this level, macro perspectives becomes essential. When we divide ergonomics into micro and macro perspectives, it becomes easier to understand this expansion. Microeconomics refers to a conventional focus on individual interactions, for example, usability, comfort, workload, and product design. Even today, this remains a dominant image of ergonomics and human factors. So on the other hand, macro ergonomics deal with broader systems, organizations, societies and cultures. It focuses on collective behavior, communication, and systemic structures. So in today's context, where we are addressing global scale problems, macroeconomics becomes particularly relevant. However, I do not mean that only macro level thinking is important. While macroeconomics helps us recognize and analyze global issues, we still need microeconomics to implement practical solutions at the human level. So macroeconomics alone cannot solve problems concretely. And the microeconomics alone cannot see the larger picture. So therefore, we must combine both perspectives. Between the two, there is also mesoeconomics, so which deal with communities and intermediate system. But for simplicity, we can consider meso as part of the macro framework. As our perspective grows broader, system-based thinking becomes more and more critical for students and researchers. It is easy to stay focused on micro-level studies, but outside that layer, there always exist teams, communities, organizations, and even global systems. So recognizing these wider layers is essential for developing a true understanding of HFE. So yeah, it is essential to understand the importance of system thinking within HFE when considering global issues. We must view the entire system of society as a whole, looking comprehensively at how humans, technologies, and environment interact within the system is crucial for identifying where ergonomic problems naturally exist. In other words, we must learn to recognize where human interaction occurs, where ergonomic considerations are required, and then apply appropriate methods to solve those issues. This process involves identifying nodes of human system interaction and analyzing them through a macroeconomic lens. Therefore, developing the ability to perceive and map where human interactions exist in complex systems is one of the key competencies that modern ergonomists must cultivate. Many people think HFE simply means designing things to be human-friendly, but that level of thinking is now taken for granted. As ergonomists, we must go one step further. We should be able to ask what kind of systems need to be human-centered, and where does human sensitivity really matter? It is not enough to say that something should be easy to use comfortably. We must identify which domains of human life and work truly require HFE intervention. So thus, I hope students and practitioners of HFE will develop the ability to to recognize such contexts and opportunities. The humans exist in many different roles, as users, as workers, as community members, as decision makers. In every one of these layers, there are situations where ergonomics, so where HFE is needed. So recognizing and uncovering these opportunities is itself a key skill for ergonomists, so HFE specialists. So when we look around, we realize that stakeholders are not limited to end users. There are many other involved: workers, organizations, communities, governments, and even the natural environment itself. Thus, HFE as a discipline is expanding far beyond its traditional boundaries. So when you first began studying HFE, you might have believed that its domain was limited to product usability or to workplace comfort and safety. But that is no longer the case. The scope of HFE has continued to expand outward from the individual to the team, from the organization to the global system. Microeconomics has long been the familiar face of the field, but I hope you will also understand the critical importance of macroeconomics. That does not mean that the macro is more important. To solve the problems, we must ultimately rely on micro-level understanding. So therefore, the integration of both aspects is what truly matters. So when we look at large-scale or global problems, a systemic viewpoint is indispensable to analyze and address them effectively. So we must understand not only human characteristics, but also the characteristics of the systems that humans are part of. So recognizing both humans and systems characteristics is essential for future HFE. So finally, let us consider the temporal axis of ergonomics. This diagram shows the overall scope of HFE. So, but we Japanese, sorry. So in this version, I have added two elements: the red line representing the dimensional of time, and the outer dotted line, so representing the expansion of global and social systems. So HFE does not exist in a static world. Both technology and society continue to evolve. Therefore, we must always consider HFE within a time frame in dealing with technological or social change. So it is crucial to take a backcasting approach to envision a desired future state and create a roadmap that connects the present to that goal. So we must imagine what kind of society should exist 10 or 20 years from now, and then ask what steps must we take today to reach that point. This temporal understanding, so awareness of designing not only for the present but for the future, is an essential part of modern HFE. So in addition to the time axis, we must also consider the global dimension of HFE. The global or planetary scale issues encompass problems such as climate change, resource depletion, and sustainability. These issues exist as higher order systems above traditional categories such as living, working, communication, and transportation. Our ways of working and living are deeply influenced by these global challenges. So therefore, we must adopt broader perspectives and consider HFE not only at the individual or organizational level, but also the global and systemic level. So looking at HFE in this broader way allows us to connect human scale understanding to planetary scale responsibility. So in conclusion, I'd like to emphasize that HFE today is no longer limited to the study of interactions between humans and objects. So it is no longer only about end users or individual usability. When viewed through a system lens, we can see that everything surrounding human life is intrinsically interconnected. Within those interconnections, humans exist as active agents. So therefore, I hope that you as students and the researchers and practitioners will cultivate the ability to identify and recognize where ergonomic considerations are needed within these complex systems. The humans engage in multiple roles, and within each role, there are opportunities where ergonomic intervention can truly make a difference. Stakeholders are no longer only users, they include all who interact within human and environmental systems. The field of HFE continues to expand outward from micro level to the from the micro level to the macro level, from individual to societies, and from local system to global challenges. To understand and address these challenges, we must integrate micro level precision with macro level system thinking. Only by combining these perspectives can HFE contribute meaningfully to the creation of sustainable and human compatible world. Yeah, today's talk is partly based on my article on so you can go and read Japanese, the Japanese Journal of Human Factors and Ergonomics. Yes, yeah, thank you very much today.
Okay, so thank you for Professor Takashi Toriuta for the great speech. So, anyone has the questions to ask Professor?
So everything okay? So about Japan or something about
Okay, yeah. So, that's the one. Do you have any question? I think you want to answer this.
It's sort of my English that's not good. But can I use the Japanese tool for asking question? Can I use this for you to ask you a question?
Japanese? Yeah, you can.
Japanese?
日本語で。
日本語で。
その前で、サイトでAI の話してます。
はいはい。AI
その AI の、AI の応用的には、オリンピックに伝えて、使って、なんか、審査賞に補助するために、補助する、審査賞、オリンピックの審査賞。
オリンピックの
審査賞、審査、裁判みたいな。
はいはいはい。
その補助の判定するのをできますか。
AI 使ってやってます。はいはいはい。
今は何
そうそう。
なんか、その補助で、なんか、そのますますやっていますか。その後は、その採算上の、なんか、入れ替わる形になる。
それは、わからないですね。今ちょっとその途中の段階にいますので、完全に人間のレフリーがいなくなるということは、私の印象ではないと思います。AI はあくまでも、人間をサポートするための位置づけなので、AI がメインになることはないんじゃないかなと思います。ありがとうございます。次からです。
希望我不要怀疑一下。
就是我刚刚问的是说那个，现在奥林匹克不是都会有那 AI 的主观定嘛？到最后会不会就直接取代掉那个裁判？但是他是说没有到，他是说目前的现阶段来说还是以指数为主。那之后会不会改？就是可能就是之后的问题，但是基本上还是以人类的判定比较重要。就是这样。
Okay, thank you. And Vincent, do you have any other questions? He's from France. I'm a student from France. Yeah, I have a student to ask questions. If we want to go to Japan to pursue the PhD degree, how much money do we need per year? And also, what is criteria for graduation? For example, like two papers, SCI papers. Also, what is the language label, Japanese language label we need?
Okay. So depends on the universities. So if you want to go to the public university, so public university is only for the doctor course. I think it's not necessary for you to the Japanese speak. I think maybe so you can write paper and you can do a research only in English. But if you want to go to the private university, I think so you need some Japanese. But if you want to go to the master course, so you need more Japanese skills. But for doctor, not so much skills of Japanese. And that drives. This is important. $200,000 Taiwan dollars per year for private. Okay. And ini
us what? I mean,
and $150,000 Taiwan dollars for public.
So probably cheaper.
Yeah, but it is a little bit cheaper.
OK，公立学校一年15万台币，私立60万。
But we have those kind of scholarships. Or the doctoral student. So, basically, doctoral student can be a teaching assistant, and maybe you can get the sorry, the calculation system is maybe 10. So 100,000 Taiwan dollars, maybe you can get from the university as a teaching assistant. No.
One year.
Maybe.
OK，一年就是10万块，如果你做 TA 的话，所以那你等于是说你需要10万块的学费。那如果公立学校的话，这样子剩5万块的学费。
And the number of the papers, so depending on the universities, I think maybe an average numbers are three peer review papers you need to get the doctorate.
So 3 papers need to publish in English or Japanese is okay.
Depends on the universities. Okay. Depends on the universities. Right here.
How about Nihon University?
So include. So Japanese is okay and English is okay.
3 papers.
Yeah, 3 papers. So minimum. Yeah. I think maybe Taiwanese is or Chinese is okay. I'm not sure. Anyway, so non-Japanese is acceptable.
Because a lot of our students are traveling to Japan.
Oh.
Yeah, so right now, you know, Chinese tourists cannot go to Japan. So it's our duty to travel to Japan. Yeah, so I think maybe some students are curious about we pursue the degree in Japan.
Yeah. So always welcome.
Okay, so any questions for first speech? Okay.
So,
In Japanese?
no. So from the perspective of JE, so do you have some meeting or groups discuss with the AI problem in the future?
Yes, that's a good question. So now we are thinking to make and to establish so research group, like the technical committee. Yeah. So that's the situation in JS.
Because in our economic organization, we have a new maybe group of people. They discuss with the AI application that we can use for improve humans' life. Yeah, but it's just I think it's just getting started.
So in JES, do you consider a professor from other domains? Because in JES, I think for the committee, AI committee, most of the members come from the economics field.
Yes.
So did you consider invite other domains like chemical engineering or electronic engineering because they they know how to use the AI to write a program, make a control. Right now, do you consider other domains?
Yeah. So basically, in the annual meeting of JS, so we sometimes, we often invite. So basically, we make the super symposium about the current topic for AI or global economics or something like that. So for the symposium, we invite the other domains. And then so make the friendly and so make the research groups with the other domains. So that's our style. So you understand?
So, yeah, questions? Okay, so if you did not have a question, so maybe we please help me to thank Professor Takashi again. So I think